On this fourth Sunday of Ordinary Time, the message we have is affirming us in the ministry of prophethood. We have heard in the first reading how Jeremiah was called to be prophet. People say, scripture scholars, that history has it that Jeremiah was most likely called to be prophet during his early 20s. And some say he was around 18, still a young man. He was planning to marry and live in his hometown, Anatot, and stay in a quiet and peaceful life. As he planned this, God also had plans for him, as he has indicated in the first reading, that before I formed you in the womb, I knew you. Before I formed you in the womb, I knew you. I am emphasizing these words for a reason. There are some people who doubt as to whether at conception there is a human being in the womb. God, the highest scientist, is saying, before I formed you, even in the womb, I know you. Therefore, it is not right to say that what is in the womb of a woman are mere tissues. That is even unfair to God. The one in the womb is a human being whom God has created purposefully. Jeremiah was formed in his mother's womb to be a prophet. So no one has a right to interrupt the plan God has put in place right away from the mother's womb. No one has a right. Even if you go in God's presence, you quote me for this. And whichever scientist contradicts this is a poor scientist. He needs to go to God for more wisdom, like St. Thomas used to do. When things got tough, he opened the tabernacle and put his head inside there. So one time when you find me putting my head inside here, do not be surprised. But at times I will do it when you are not around. I'm sure of that. Jeremiah is called right away at conception to be a prophet to all nations, not Israel alone, all nations, because the writer of the book of Jeremiah knows God has a universal concern for all people, all nations. And secondly, Israel as a nation was impacted by the people around her. So even these need the good work of a prophet to hear the good news from God in order to live as a people, fully participating and sharing in God's goodness. That's why at the beginning of this Mass I said that we are a prophetic people, called and sent to share God's goodness in charity to all people. And God already ahead of time warns Jeremiah that when you take on mission, you shall face hardships. But do not be afraid, I will be with you, to strengthen you, to guard you, to protect you. And people will experience how firmly rooted you are in me who is sending you. All these things happen in a dialogical way, which means Jeremiah and God already had a deep and intimate relationship, even as a young person, 18, 20. So young people, having a relationship with God is not a luxury. It's for all of you, all of us. Jeremiah began this at an early age. And look what happened. He came to know his plan in time, and he acted in time. And during the 40 years as a prophet, he fully experienced what God had foretold. He went through persecution. He was shunned. He was disliked. He was looked at as someone who is unbearable. He was rejected. He was ridiculed. And we can say he walked a path of passion like Christ. But he took all this in good faith because he knew right away in his childhood that this was what he was chosen for. In baptism, we are made aware of what we are chosen for, to be a people prophetic. And this is the mission we take on immediately after being anointed with the chrism. God is inviting us to welcome and renew our love for this mission today. Let's rekindle the love, let's rekindle the art, let's rekindle our strength for the mission of the word as we saw last Sunday. Let's maintain that dialogue that existed between Jeremiah and God, unbroken. Because it's through this dialogue that we shall come to know the full impact and implications of our vocation. And when Jesus begins mission, as we saw last Sunday, the closing verse of last Sunday's gospel is the opening verse of today's gospel. Again, it is in line with the word, proclaiming the word. Now Jesus is doing prophetic mission in his own home area. When he preaches and explains, at first he is admired, and people comment very positively. When he continues to unveil the message, the word, some begin to get offended. They begin to find reasons for not appreciating him. Their ears are hurt. They begin asking, isn't this the son of Joseph? They thought they knew him. And things continued. And when they examined him, they found out that he was even no longer living among them. He had left Nazareth and shifted to Capernaum. And Capernaum was full of pagans who never respected the law even. And that's where he did miracles. And they were almost telling him that if you worked miracles among pagans, do them here as well. Now they are getting reasons for distancing themselves from him. And when he continues to preach and points to examples that are outside Israel about the woman of Sidon and about Naaman, then they get to say, oh, how can God's salvation even go to pagan nations? We thought this is time for revenge. These pagans have been giving us a hard time. How can God distribute his goodness even to pagans? Then they say, silently, this must not be a good preacher. So they decide to teach him a lesson. They kick him out of their town. to go and kill him, but he passed through their midst and went. Today, prophets are not finding it easy to do mission. As a prophetic people, I assure you, it's not easy for us even today. We have fears of rejection. We feel that we might not be received well, even in our households. Sometimes we are afraid of our message being misrepresented, so we keep quiet. At other moments, we fear to try again or to start at all because we feel it will be too much for the people. This is too much for the kids. At other times, it is our own rebellion, like Jonah, in the scriptures. Because of his ego, he said, no, I'm not going that direction. But God took him in the fish's belly, and there he was educated. At others, we fear to lose friends. And on certain occasions, we fear humiliation, of which Jeremiah was told in the first reading, to be scorned, criticized, and misunderstood, because we want applause. At other times, we have a limiting mindset. We say, let's just do the minimum. That will be enough. We have prayed enough. That's okay. After Mass, what else can we add? And at times, our gifts are curtailed because we have the problem of appeal to amazement. We want people to be amazed at our gifts. And when we feel people might not be impressed, we leave it all. But still the world needs prophets today. And you are the prophet of the day who is needed. Because people are suffering problems of compartmentalization of faith. Others are suffering the problem of making fun of faith and church teaching. There are others who are also facing problems of fraud in workplaces. There are instances of neglect of prayer even in households. We also face challenges of indifference even in the face of misleading ideologies, like this issue of tissues in the womb. That's exactly where our prophetism is needed. Let's put it there in charity so that people can share of the goodness of God. And if we do this lovingly, as the letter of St. Paul has told us in the second reading, we shall redeem the world and return it to its origin. And this is what it means to use our charisms for the benefit of others. And I ask you today to get some time and go through the readings of today, that as I am, fellow prophets, you read it and say, even before the kids, the household, I am patient, I am kind, I am never boastful and jealous. St. Paul has used 15 or so descriptions of love. Put it on yourself, that I am joyful, I don't enjoy wrong, and everything in that line. And see how effective your prophetic mission is. May God help us to answer this call generously as we endeavor to share the abundant goodness of God with all people non-stop. The Lord be with you.